The morning sunlight spilled across the floor like golden silk, but it brought no warmth to me that day. I stood in my kitchen, hands trembling around a chipped coffee mug, rereading the group message for the third time. Bridal brunch this Saturday. Can't wait to celebrate with all the special ladies in my life. RSVP soon. My darling's ring bouquet. It had come from my niece, Amanda, radiant, adored, the center of our family's universe for the past 2 years as she planned her lavish wedding. The message wasn't what caught me off guard. It was the names it was sent to. My sisters, my cousins, my late brother's wife. But not me. Not once. Not ever. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't invited. I wasn't even mentioned. I closed the message and stared blankly ahead. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in my modest townhouse. No echoing laughter of family. No rush of wedding chatter. Just silence and the stinging realization that I had become invisible to the people I had once bent over backwards to protect. My name is Denise Holloway, and I was the one who helped raise Amanda when her mother, my own sister, walked away. I was the one who bought her prom dress when no one else could. The one who took night shifts to afford her community college textbooks before she transferred to NYU on scholarship. And yet here I was, erased from the narrative of her special day. They said I wasn't important enough to be part of the guest list. But the truth was, I had stopped being convenient. I had served my purpose, and now, like the hand-me-downs I used to patch up for her, I had been discarded. That day, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even call anyone to ask why. I simply walked to the spare room of my house, opened the dusty cabinet where I kept old documents, and pulled out a thick folder labeled The Holloway Legacy. Because if they thought I was just a ghost from the past, then they were about to learn I was the architect of the future. And they had just given me the perfect reason to rise. The Holloway Legacy folder had been untouched for years. It was a thick, weathered binder filled with documents, handwritten notes, business ledgers, and pages of designs. My grandfather had started it in 1968 when he opened the family's first fabric mill in North Carolina. He'd built the business with grit, long before words like legacy or generational wealth became buzzwords. And when he passed, he left it all, his formulas, partnerships, and visions, not to his sons, but to his quiet granddaughter, Denise. Me. Back then, the family raised eyebrows. Why would he trust the unmarried one? The plain one? The one who never left her hometown? But Grandpa had seen what others hadn't. He knew I had a head for logistics and a heart for people. I didn't just crunch numbers. I listened to the seamstresses. I paid the interns. I mapped out new markets quietly, while my cousins partied on yachts. And now, Amanda's wedding, ironically themed around heritage and sustainability, was sourcing custom silk veils and hand-stitched embroidery from a local boutique. A boutique that happened to use my patterns, my connections, my legacy. They didn't even realize I was behind it. They had turned me into a footnote, and they didn't know the ink was mine. As I flipped through the folder, I found an old photo tucked between two licensing agreements. It was Amanda, barely 11, sitting beside me at the sewing machine, watching wide-eyed as I taught her how to hem. Her handwriting was scrawled at the bottom. One day, I'll make dresses just like Aunt Denise. I closed my eyes for a moment. This wasn't about an invitation anymore. This was about how easily people forget the hands that held them. How quickly they rewrite stories to make themselves the heroes. But I wasn't going to beg for a seat at the table. I was going to buy the building the table stood in. And the first step? Calling Evelyn. Evelyn knew everything about the wedding. She was the discreet planner behind most of the elite family functions in the state. I'd helped her launch her company 15 years ago, loaned her the capital, coached her through her first contracts. She owed me a favor, and I wasn't above collecting now. I picked up the phone. Evelyn? It's Denise. I need the full wedding vendor list, and I need it quietly. Evelyn didn't ask questions. She never did. Within the hour, I had a neat, encrypted email sitting in my inbox titled Amanda Holloway Wedding, Vendor Overview, Confidential. Scrolling through it, I recognized every name. Florals by Bloom and Vine, which I had quietly invested in under a trust 5 years ago. Catering by Lucian's Table, The same chef I helped sponsor through culinary school when his immigrant visa nearly expired. And then I saw it. The name that stung most. Dressmaker, Lorette and Finch, New York. Custom gown designed by Esme Finch. That name was once a whisper at my grandfather's mill. Esme had interned under me, learned the craft at my elbow, borrowed my techniques, and promised to always credit her roots. She'd gone on to become the toast of bridal couture, yet in all her interviews, she referenced a small-town mentor without ever mentioning my name. Now she was making my niece's wedding dress, using embroidery techniques I developed. Stitching heritage I preserved into a gown I wasn't even allowed to see. The irony was almost poetic. I clicked the contact number Evelyn had discreetly attached and waited as the phone rang. Lorette and Finch Bridal Atelier, the assistant chirped. I'd like to place a custom order, but I need Esme herself to take the call. Tell her, the hummingbird is awake. There was a pause. A soft gasp. Then, one moment please. Back when we were younger, Esme and I had a code. The hummingbird was what she called me for how I moved quiet, quick, always working behind the scenes. She'd told me once that hummingbirds were overlooked but essential. I never forgot that. Now I intended to remind her. When Esme came on the line, her voice trembled. Denise, it's been a long time. Not long enough for you to forget who taught you about hand-loom sequences. Silence. Then softly, I didn't know the bride was your niece. I would've. You would've what, Esme? Given me credit? Called me? Declined the commission. She said nothing. I leaned in. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to finish Amanda's dress exactly as you planned. But you're going to sew my initials inside the lining, where only she'll find them. No explanation. Just let her wonder. That's dramatic. It's justice, I replied. A small thread of truth sewn into a fabric of lies. Before she could respond, I hung up. Because some lessons didn't require discussion. They required reminders. And Amanda's big day was about to become my quiet masterpiece. The week of the wedding arrived like a storm with no thunder, silent, tense, and heavy with anticipation. I hadn't spoken to Amanda, nor had I tried. My sister Lorraine had gone radio silent too, likely thinking her cruel maneuver had cut me from the family tree for good. But they didn't know I had already planted roots elsewhere, roots that were blooming fast beneath the surface. Through Evelyn's subtle brilliance, I received a daily update on every wedding detail. Not once did my name appear on any guest list. Not on the seating chart. Not even among the maybe invites. Yet I knew I'd be there. Not to ruin the day, but to reclaim a dignity they thought they could erase. The morning of the ceremony, I slipped into a tailored black dress, elegant but understated, and stood before the mirror. I fastened the brooch my mother had given me when I was 15, long before she became someone else's cheerleader. It was the only token of affection I hadn't boxed away. As I checked my hair, a notification buzzed on my phone. Arrival confirmed. 12:45 p.m., East Wing entrance. The message was from Mateo, former Navy, now discreet security coordinator for high-profile clients, and someone whose loyalty I earned years ago when I helped his daughter through nursing school without asking for a dime. Amanda didn't know he had personally arranged security for her wedding, and she certainly didn't know I was now on his list of authorized VIPs. At exactly 12:42, I approached the east wing of the estate, where the staff were bustling in tuxedos and headsets, moving crates of champagne and place cards. One of the guards spotted me. Without hesitation, he nodded respectfully. Ms. Denise Carrington. Right this way. Just like that, I was in. No spotlight. No grand entrance. Just quiet power in motion. As I made my way through the garden corridor, I passed the rehearsal photos framed along the walls, Amanda laughing beside Lorraine, my brother Ethan giving a toast, even my ex-husband grinning in the background like a misplaced artifact. But there wasn't a single trace of me. It was as if I'd been edited out of history. I reached the bridal chamber just in time to hear Amanda scream. Who did this? Who thought this was funny? The door flew open and Esme came rushing out, looking pale. She didn't see me until we were face to face. I smiled, calm and precise. Problem with the stitching? She stared at me, then gave a curt nod. She found it. The initials. DC stitched into the inner hem of the gown, just where the bride would see it when she lifted it to walk. A memory. A ghost. A reminder she didn't invite, yet couldn't ignore. I didn't need to see Amanda's face, because I already knew what it would look like. Confused, ashamed, and finally afraid. This wedding wasn't about joy. It was about erasure. And I had just proven that even forgotten names leave marks, especially when they're sewn into silk and shadow. The sun filtered through the glass-paneled ceiling of the estate's grand ballroom, casting golden streaks across every table, centerpiece, and champagne flute. Guests arrived in waves, dressed in designer suits and gowns, smiles plastered on like masks, murmuring names of people they hardly knew but needed to impress. I sat quietly near the back of the garden, behind a marble trellis, not part of the guest list, yet very much present. I didn't need a seat. I had a purpose. From where I stood, I saw Amanda emerge at the top of the stairs in her gown, my gown. The dress I had spent months designing as a private commission before she ever knew it existed. The one she'd unknowingly chosen from a boutique I had silent stake in. It had passed through her hands and onto her frame, and she never questioned how it fit her body so perfectly. And now she knew. Those tiny initials stitched on the inner hem whispered everything. You didn't build this moment alone. You wore the very fabric of the woman you tried to erase. Her eyes scanned the crowd like a falcon sensing threat. I saw her smile falter. She whispered something to Lorraine who, in turn, shot a glance toward the staff and gestured urgently. But it was too late. Because that morning, I had given Esme, my loyal former apprentice and now lead coordinator, a small white envelope. One that was handed to the wedding MC at the reception. A tribute letter, I'd said. Amanda thought it was from a college professor or a childhood friend. Someone here to sing her praises. Instead, the microphone crackled and the room turned silent. The MC cleared his throat. This message, he said, was requested by a very special guest of the bride's. A woman who has seen her through every failure, every fall, and every forgotten phone call. Amanda froze mid-sip of her champagne. Dear Amanda, the voice echoed across the ballroom. I want you to know I've watched you climb ladders made of other people's efforts and smile atop stages you didn't build. Guests shifted uncomfortably. While I raised your sister, while I helped you land your first job, while I sacrificed more than you'll ever know, you made sure I remained a ghost in every photo. Amanda stood now, lips parted, frozen. But even ghosts have stories. And today, I wanted to remind you real legacies aren't built on lies. They're sewn thread by thread. Like the dress you're wearing. A collective gasp. She's here, someone whispered. The groom's eyes searched the crowd. Amanda looked like the air had been sucked from her lungs. She didn't see me. I was already slipping away through the back corridor. This wasn't about applause. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about truth. And the truth was, she had to wear me to feel beautiful today. I disappeared before the applause broke out. Because I didn't need to be seen to be remembered. I had just reached the gravel path behind the ballroom when I heard the faint sound of glass breaking, then shouting. Not from Amanda. From the groom. I stopped just beyond the ivy-covered archway, still concealed but close enough to listen. You lied about everything, Amanda, he snapped. About the dress, about your sister, about how this day came together. His voice wasn't raised for drama. It was the sharp sting of betrayal cutting through pretense. Amanda's voice cracked. She's just trying to ruin my moment. But it wasn't working anymore. Because the guests weren't nodding. They weren't rushing to defend her. They were glancing at each other, at the wedding program, at the embroidered dress detail, and whispering things she couldn't control. The groom, Mark, held up the hem of her dress in front of everyone. This was stitched by her. You made me believe it came from a Paris atelier. And now I find out your sister owns the boutique. His eyes scanned the crowd. And you didn't invite her? Amanda sputtered. She's not important. And there it was. The final nail. A gasp swept through the room like a wave. In that moment, I didn't feel vindicated, I felt free. Because for once, Amanda's carefully manufactured illusion was unraveling without me having to lift a finger. She was imploding under her own weight. Later that night, I sat in a quiet corner of my condo overlooking the city skyline, sipping tea, my phone buzzing every few minutes. Old friends, family, even two distant cousins who had attended the wedding and finally realized the truth. Was that really your voice? She wore your dress? I can't believe what she did to you. And in every message, in every voice note, I heard something I hadn't felt in years. Respect. They had ignored me when I was quiet, dismissed me when I was kind, erased me when I sacrificed. But now I wasn't just Amanda's sister. I was the woman who could turn silence into thunder. By the time Sunday morning rolled around, the wedding video had made it onto social media. Not the official highlights, the real footage. Someone had recorded the moment Amanda tried to spin her lie and the groom caught her in it. The moment my name, Delilah Morgan, was connected to the bridal gown business she had stolen credit for. The moment I turned and walked away without saying a word, yet said everything. It spread like wildfire. A local wedding blog picked it up first, then a fashion TikTok page that specialized in bridal gossip. By noon, my boutique's website had crashed from the traffic. By evening, I had 4 requests for exclusive dress lines, 2 from influencers, and 1 from an actual bridal magazine. And for the first time in years, my phone calls were being returned. Not out of obligation, but because people finally saw me, not as Amanda's older, less exciting sister, but as the creative force behind some of the most sought-after designs in the state. Even my mother called. Delilah, she began, trying to keep her voice composed. This whole thing's gotten out of hand. I said nothing. You embarrassed your sister. I took a breath, slow and deep. I didn't embarrass her, Mom. She did that all by herself. I just stopped hiding. Silence. Then, softer, you really made that dress? I didn't answer with words. Instead, I forwarded her the email I'd just received from Brides Today. The subject line read, "Interested in featuring the designer behind the now viral wedding gown. Let them talk. Let them see. Let them finally understand that I had never disappeared. I was simply waiting for the moment they stopped looking away. And now, they couldn't look anywhere else." The following week felt like living in a parallel reality, only this time, I wasn't the invisible one. I sat across from Marjorie Lane, the editor-in-chief of Brides Today, at a rooftop cafe in downtown Charleston. She sipped her lavender latte as she reviewed the sketches I had brought. My hands should have been trembling. They weren't. "I've followed your work for years, Delilah," she said, setting the portfolio down with a warm smile. "I just didn't know it was yours." That sentence stung and healed at the same time. "I was always the ghost behind Amanda's glow," I replied. "But not anymore." She nodded, then pulled out a contract. A 6-page spread. National release. My name, not Amanda's. Not Morgan Bridal under my sister's face. Just Delilah Morgan, designer. I signed it without hesitation. The day the feature came out, the title read, "The Hidden Genius Behind the Viral Wedding Dress and Her Stunning Comeback." Amanda's face wasn't in the article. Mine was. Elegant. Poised. Powerful. That same evening, I hosted a private launch party for my new bridal collection. The venue? The exact estate Amanda had booked for her honeymoon. Unbeknownst to her, a scheduling mishap had canceled her original reservation. And I had quietly bought out the remaining dates weeks ago, before I ever stepped foot at her wedding. Her face when she saw the signage? Priceless. Her friends who once mocked me? Now guests sipping champagne under a banner that read, "Introducing the Morgan Collection, designed by Delilah Morgan." I hadn't planned it as revenge. Not at first. But when you've been ignored long enough, when your voice has been silenced by your own family, sometimes the loudest thing you can do is simply succeed, louder than they ever imagined. And I wasn't done yet. Amanda showed up at my studio unannounced. She wore oversized sunglasses and a black cashmere coat that practically screamed disguise, but I recognized her walk immediately, hurried, jittery, that same posture she wore when she got caught cheating on a math exam in high school. She hated being exposed. My assistant gave her a curious look before gesturing to the back office. I stood near a rack of freshly sewn gowns, each one stitched with care, none bearing her signature. I need to talk, Amanda blurted, removing her glasses and letting her purse drop to the floor. About what? The honeymoon suite you lost or the dress that made you famous for 15 minutes? She flinched. You planned that, didn't you? I didn't answer. I simply let the silence stretch long enough for her to understand. Amanda looked around, taking in the sleek workspace, the high-end fittings, the magazine covers framed along the wall, all featuring me. This is unbelievable, she whispered. No, I corrected gently. This is earned. Amanda's eyes watered. Why didn't you ever say anything? That it was you designing all those years. You never asked, I said. You were too busy letting everyone believe it was your genius. Mom and Dad loved it. You got applause. I got silence. And for a long time, I thought maybe that's all I was worth. She lowered her gaze. I didn't think it would matter. We were building something together. No, Amanda, I said. You were building your brand. I was your shadow. There was a long pause. Then she said something that surprised me. Dad told me not to share credit with you. He said one spotlight is easier to sell than two. My breath caught. It made sense, the subtle slights. The birthday where they forgot to invite me but booked Amanda a trip to Paris. It was never about who had more talent. It was about who fit their mold of success better. And I wasn't the golden child. I was the thread. But not anymore. Delilah. Amanda stepped closer. Can we fix this? I gave her a long, unreadable look. Then I walked to the window and opened the blinds. The sunlight hit my sketchboard, highlighting the latest gown, soft lilac with ivory trim. The tag, for those who rise alone. I don't think I need fixing anymore, I said quietly. But you might want to sit with that mirror a little longer. She didn't respond. She just turned and left, slower this time. Heavier. 3 months after Amanda's walkout, my name was etched in gold across the glass doors of the city's most exclusive bridal design house, Delilah Morgan Atelier. The grand opening invitation was circulated carefully, not through the family grapevine, but through the industries that once overlooked me. Vogue, Harper's, local, and national press. And one hand-addressed envelope had been sent to Amanda herself, not out of spite, but with precision. A mirror again. A chance. That morning, I stood backstage in a soft rose pantsuit, the final model shimmering under the runway lights in a gown I designed entirely by hand. Not a stitch borrowed. Not a thread hidden. The applause thundered, not just for the designs, but for the story they carried. It was more than fashion. It was survival identity rebirth. When I stepped onto the stage, the lights weren't too bright anymore. I didn't shrink. I stood tall, waving at the crowd, at the press, at the people who once ignored the quiet girl behind the sewing machine. In the front row, I saw them, my parents. Dressed up like supporters, but unsure whether to clap or shrink. Mom's smile was stiff. Dad looked pale. Amanda wasn't with them. I walked forward, holding the mic, and began. Once upon a time, I was just a girl with a needle and no voice. Everything I made disappeared into someone else's spotlight. But today, every thread you see, it's mine. Not for revenge. For truth. There was silence. Then a single clap. Then more. Until the entire room stood in ovation. Later, in the dressing room, I found an envelope sitting on the table. No name. Inside was a note in Amanda's handwriting. You were always the better designer. I was just louder. And tucked inside was the very first sketch I ever drew, one I thought had been thrown away. She had kept it. It didn't change the past, but it did soften it. I walked outside into the evening air, heels clicking against the pavement, chin held high. The city lights blinked around me like stars rearranging themselves, a new constellation for a woman who was no longer stitched into someone else's story. She had finally written her own.